back, everyone, to another episode of Sisto Says, powered by Design 2147, a New York City code and zoning consultant here in New York City. Today, I have David Gross of GF55. David.
Nice to see you.
You made it. You
No
made it
problem.
to Greenpoint. Thanks for coming in. So, David, we go back a long way. We worked on a lot of projects together.
We have.
Power of People. I love Alice from your office. I pestered her and said, listen, I got to get David on the show. She says, I'll make it happen. And she did.
She tells me what to do when I go.
That's great. So we chatted earlier because we have a history together, but
Right.
We chatted a couple of days ago about how you became this architect in New York City, and it's a great story. And I think that part of my show is to tell people that before you start telling us about your projects and about what we did and the topics we talk about, is the path to being an architect in New York City is always the fun part. So tell us a little bit about your undergrad, where you and how you got here and what you're doing now.
Okay, I grew up in Ohio, outside of Cleveland, which is, a industrial city. Everybody sort of has an edge there.
Yeah.
Because, we always feel like people are underestimating us.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to school in Philly, UPenn, Ivy League, and filled with people from all over the world and a strange species of people called New Yorkers. And it was my first real exposure to New Yorkers. And one thing I loved about New Yorkers and I love about New York is their unlimited ambition.
Yes.
So I used to what the hell are you guys talking about? You're going to be president of CBS. You're going to be chairman of Goldman. We're sophomores. What's your problem? Gross. What's your problem? That's that's why we're here.
That's the edge.
And it took me a while to sort of vision where I would be in 25, 30 years, and it was very healthy actually. So I after I graduated school, I moved to New York, lived in Tribeca. I was a pioneer. I lived there for 10 years. There was one little bodega there. There was a guy had a big dewlap. That was the only store that was there. We would go shopping in the village. And then I moved up to Westchester, where I raised my family, and sort of foolishly opened my own office at the age of 29. No real business plan, but
Right, but before you get to that part, you
Sure.
actually worked for someone for a while.
Right.
Right. And a prestigious firm.
Right. I worked for Hardy Hulse & Fife from
Right.
in 80 to 84. That was a really special place. They were the gold medal architecture firm in those days.
And I believe they still have the name of the firm. That's not Hardy
Yes.
Hulse, but it's H3 or something.
H3, right.
Right.
Two of the
And
lead partners.
we still do some work for them, and when I broke into the business in 1986, you worked for them. It was prestigious to
Yes.
have them as your client on your. So you were there, and so you get out of school, you go there, and what are you doing for them?
And I was the junior designer working directly under the partners.
Wow.
And, in school, it's more academic and it's more bespoke, sort of, like, Mr. Gross, what are your goals? Let's see, how to achieve your dream. But when you work in the professional world, especially there, they had three very dynamic partners. And my job was to execute all three partners' designs every day. So it really taught me how to be responsive and fluent in, one guy wanted a long scheme, one guy wanted a tall scheme. It wasn't up to me to choose.
Right.
So I had to execute that, and it was great. A lot of pressure, but it was really an excellent training.
Well, it's funny how you bring up about the whole New York thing. When I was deciding where I was going to go to school, I had applied to Cornell, I had applied to Pratt, I had applied to City College, and my mentor went to Cooper Union, and unfortunately he passed away at a young age. He was sick in his 50s, but he mentored me since I was like 8 years old to be an architect, and one of the things that he said is there was a huge advantage to going to City College versus Cornell. And I said, well, how could that be? They're Ivy League. What do you mean,
right.
Joe? He goes, because your professors go to work in the morning
Right.
and then come over. And a lot of the professors when I started my own business while I was in college, within years, they were my clients because they were design architects, but they weren't the nuts and bolts of the code and the zoning. So I learned a valuable lesson there that in City College, it was more about practicality of architecture in New York City than it was about theory. And your point is well taken because that is the edge that New York City has.
I think so. And also the idea of being a New York architect. When I was in school, we would have professors, architects come from all over the world to critique our work at juries.
And look for Ivy League kids.
Right. But the New York architect, I don't care if you were 25 or 50 or whatever, always wore a perfect suit with a perfect white shirt, a tie, great shoes. All the other architects look kind of hippy-dippy, you know? But the New York architect had a vibe about them that was creative but very businessy. Yeah. And I find that very appealing.
Yeah, so it's amazing because there is a style.
Yes.
Right? When I first came here, I don't know about you, but a lot of architects, they all wore bow ties with a beautiful suit.
Right.
That was the look.
Corduroy jacket.
Yeah, and exactly. Corduroy jacket. And some of them, even when I went to City College, they smoked the pipe. You know? And that's the way it was. And it was funny, one of the shows that I recorded with Annie Holford Smith from Platt PBDW, we were talking about Norval White, who wrote the AIA guide, and he was my professor, and he would take us around Manhattan, and with no book, no scripture, no notes, and he'd say, "Okay, that building, that's the narrowest building in New York City. It was built in 1873. This was the architect." It was amazing to me. So the practicality of New York City was just amazing. But the best part of your story that I know offline that I want you to share is, tell us the story about how you got published in Architectural Record. Because to me, I think that is just the whole way it happened was great.
So my partner Len Fusco, who we are buddies from grad school, we opened without a particular plan as a business.
Why would you need a plan?
Why would we need a plan? We were 29 years old. We were going to conquer the world. And we really just thought if we did super hard work that the world would discover us. And it really wasn't quite true.
Right. You just do the grunt and it'll happen.
And so we went from designing museums and very prestigious cultural buildings to house additions, kitchen additions, apartment renovations. And in those days, apartment renovation was the basic work for a young architect could get started.
Put up one wall and redo my kitchen and my bath.
Right. So we worked our way up to doing a lot of very nice apartment renovations. I submitted our project to Architectural Digest. And I had said, if things don't turn around, I'm going to go do something else because I don't want to be doing kitchens and bathrooms. I want to do buildings and real architecture.
Because you already were in that world before you started.
Right.
I mean, you went from here right there to three partners designing incredible buildings, facades, interiors, whatever. You know, that's pretty impressive coming out of college.
So I walked into the office. So we applied, to Digest. They said, we're thinking of getting you in. So I walked into the office on the day of my 40th birthday.
I love this story.
And the magazine is on my desk. And and Len says, we're in. I said, what? Okay, yeah, we're in. But
BS.
why did you copy, our picture and just paste it on the cover? He says, no, you don't understand. We're on the cover. And that really changed the trajectory of our career.
That's amazing.
Because I went to Paris after that, and the magazine was on the newsstand, and I went all over, and it was just very prestigious in those days.
That's amazing.
To be on the cover, and we were in a few times after that for different projects.
I love the stories.
That was it turned it around.
I just love the stories. I think that everyone has a crazy path, and my path was similar in a lot of weird ways. I had my mentor, Joe Simmons, who went to Cooper Union, grew up in Brooklyn, nice Jewish family, great kid. He wanted to be an architect. He applied to go to Cooper Union at night, and he got in.
Right.
And he went to school for free, and he got out of school, and he was just a great designer. And I was working for a plumbing company, and one day Joe said to me, "Hey, Sisto, I need a favor. Our expediter is sick." He was an older gentleman. He says, "You need to go to Queens, and you need to get a permit for this house I'm doing." He was doing some like landmark thing in Forest Hills, I think it was.
Right.
So I go up. I lived in Queens. I went up to West End Avenue, and I went to his place, and I gave me a folder. And he says, "All right, everything's in here." He says, "Go to Queens and come back with this permit."
You were very eager.
And I go, "All right." So I take this stuff.
Right.
I didn't even know what I was getting myself into.
You did not.
But he was my mentor. He, like, while I was in college, I'm in college at this point.
Right.
And he's like, "Hey, Joe, I designed this. Can you take a look? Give me a critique before I do it." And we didn't have a fax machine or anything. You had to go over to his place, and he would smoke a cigarette, have his Brooklyn Dodger cap on, and we'd shoot the BS, And,
Right.
and he taught me architecture. And so he sends me there. Make a long story short, I get there. It's chaos. Like, oh my God, this is nuts. This is
Right.
crazy. There's people running around like the place is on fire, running from line to line. So I get to the window. There's a woman there. She was very unfriendly. And I basically put the Italian charm on her and said, "Listen, miss, I don't know anything. All I know is my boss said he needs a permit. Everything should be in here. Here's the check to the building department." She goes, "Honey, don't worry. I'll help you." I said, "Okay." She stamps everything up. I go back. I get there, and Joe, in his polite way, goes, "What the heck are you doing back here so fast?" "Well, Joe, I got your permit." He goes, "BS." He goes, "You didn't get my permit. Most people have to go 4 times before you get
Exactly.
anything." So anyway, he gives me the thing, right, David? And I'm ready to leave, and he goes, "Hey, wait, sister, I need to pay you." I said, "David, you're like my dad. You don't pay me." No. I was going to pay the other guy. I'm going to pay you. So he writes me a check. I put it in my pocket. I had a little bit of scruples not to look at it while I'm
Right.
there. So I get downstairs and I look at it and I go, "Holy crap. He just gave me $250. I'm drafting for 2 weeks to make this." I go back upstairs. I go, "Joe, you got a minute?" He goes, "Yeah, why? What's up?" I go, "First of all, thank you very much. But second of all, there was a guy behind me who had 5 of these. Did he just make $1,200? He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Let me have one of those Camels and let me have a black coffee. I know what I'm going to do the rest of my life."
That's so funny.
And that's how I started Design 2147 in college. I went to the professors and said, "Do you have an expediter?" And he goes, "Yeah, we have somebody." I go, "I got 3 or 4 buddies from college, all that were at City College. We went to our professors and said, we're going to start to do expediting." And that's how I started to build my firm. And I worked for Carmi B. I worked for a lot of prestigious New York architects that taught at City College. And that's how I started my business. And then slowly but surely, lo and behold, we grew and grew and grew and grew. So architecture in New York City is changing a lot.
Right. Yes, it is.
And you and I worked on a really great project together that I would like for us to talk a little bit about. Because
Okay.
I remember when it first started, it was in the logistics world. It's a terminal right by JFK. And for many years, the design of logistics terminals was one story with loading berths. You
Right.
backed up and you went out the other side. And this particular developed with a joint venture. They came up with a different idea of having ramps like in other countries out west in Asia, where they're limited for space, where they make these massive ramps to bring trucks around instead of it being flat. So tell us a little bit about it, because it really was the first one in New York City, and now they're everywhere.
It was the timing was amazing because we started it a few months before COVID hit.
Correct.
So the demand for logistics distribution centers in a city skyrocketed during COVID because people were renovating their apartment. They wanted to have the washing machine that they ordered yesterday delivered tomorrow. Right. And it was not just consumer goods, but also it services the airport. Right. But it's the second multi-story logistics center in the country.
Correct.
And it's basically a warehouse, an aluminum warehouse with a on-ramp surrounding it, capable of handling 35 to 50-foot trucks. It is a big success.
Huge
and
success.
It's also very unique because obviously you don't build it vertically unless you're confined for space.
Correct.
So it services an urban area, and what's more urban than New York?
Right.
And once I think we finished it, everybody's copying the idea.
Yes.
And,
So one of the things that was interesting is I remember us doing the ramps. And I
Right.
remember that they were concerned with the ramps and the heavy trucks getting around.
Right.
Right. So tell us a little bit about that. Because I
Well,
remember there was something really special about it. I don't remember it off the top.
Massive engineering. I mean, they're literally like on ramps, and the movement of turning with a large truck creates like a bending moment and a twisting.
Right.
So it really has to be incredibly robust. That's what the structural engineers would say. Oh, we have to do something very robust.
Well, but they were always robust, but they're extra robust.
Extra robust. And no, it's just a fascinating thing. It's an industrial building, and that's something that we're getting into more and more because, I mean, everybody needs tons of apartments, and everybody needs schools. We do all that, but the industrial building within the urban center is more in demand.
And to share that thought, you know, part of it is that the demand for industrial and manufacturing has dwindled because the city keeps converting neighborhoods like Greenpoint, like Long Island City, like the Bronx, where there was all manufacturing.
Right.
They redistricted to put up housing, but they're not redistricting to give back manufacturing. They're taking it away. So what's happening is that per square foot, industrial real estate is through the roof right now because
Right.
the supply, years ago there was too much supply and no demand. Now there's no supply and a lot of demand.
And more demand,
And
yeah.
more demand because the way logistics are working and drop shipping and everything getting sent to people's homes instead of us going to the stores to buy it.
Right.
It's really changed that.
Right. There's not so much manufacturing happening in the
Warehousing.
city, but there's industrial zoning to accommodate distribution centers and points of distribution centers to move the goods
Around the
around
city.
around the area.
Yeah.
They
So-
still have giant distribution centers outside
Yeah,
the urban
well,
core
yeah.
in New Jersey,
Yeah, or you
acres
go up
and acres.
right now. You go up Route 17 or Route 87.
Right.
You know they're building these. Every piece of property that's along the highway now, you could see that they've cleared it out.
Right.
They're making them green with solar panels and putting
Right.
a distribution center. So
Exactly.
it seems like that is the new model for the way years ago it was a rail. Now it's going to be trucking and distribution
Absolutely.
centers. So
Absolutely.
here you are. You're on architectural record. You did these great, but meanwhile, as an architect, you adapt to do something of that magnitude that's really state of the art and second in the country.
And there's one little trick that we had to our success. Never say we can't do it.
Right.
I mean, you get a new type of business, a new type of building. Oh, yeah, we can definitely do that. Oh, yeah. So we got that opportunity, and okay, we can do it.
Now, as a designer, where do you start with that? Like, how do you envision? I know there's a lot of big structural components, and you're really guided a lot by that. But you also have to meet the program needs, right? Of
Right.
how open the space is. How do the trucks get in? How do they move around? And with a lot of consultants, going from doing a school last week and doing a high-rise residential that you and I are working on in Brooklyn right now.
Right.
All of a sudden, your office and the people that work for you are shifting into this industrial thing. That's not an easy thing to do.
It was a little unfamiliar, but the program itself is not that complex. And like anything else, you got to know a guy. You have to know somebody who's an expert at it. So there's an expert at storage, there's an expert at
Right.
truck sizes, there's an expert at transportation, there's an expert at
there's
distribution.
always somebody to make up the
right,
team.
Right. There's someone who's done it before, and the developer that we work with, Triangle,
Awesome.
they know how to do everything.
They know it.
So
Lester,
had a
their whole team,
tremendous-
Brett,
right.
everybody.
And they also work with a level of contractor that really knows how to push this scale of industrial building through.
It's really a great project. If anyone ever has a moment, it's called Terminal Logistics.
Terminal Logistics Center,
Right.
South Conduit Terminal
South Conduit.
Logistics Center.
It's all over the internet. You could see it on on Yibby. You're the real deal. And it's
Right.
a fantastic project. Congratulations, a
Thank
great
you.
job. So tell us a little bit about what's hot these days. I know you and I are in the school business a lot. It's a big part of my show.
What's hot? These days? We've done 8 charter schools in the last 2 years because to
Congratulations.
do a school with a school construction authority is 3 times the cost, 6 times the time, 80 times the scrutiny. And to build a charter school, the person who gets the charter basically acts like
It's a developer.
A developer.
Right.
Right. So it's more direct. They have more risk, but they still have to provide the same education.
Sure.
It's the same educational standards, and it's much more direct. You can really make it
And it's
happen
faster.
sooner. Faster, and the city is obviously sensitive to the fact that there's a need for schools, and they're very successful.
Great.
So success breeds success. And the other thing is apartment buildings, obviously.
Yeah, we're working on a great project downtown on Willoughby Street together. We're almost
Exactly.
wrapping that up.
But only in New York. Willoughby Street is a street that was probably laid out in 1709. And how you can build a 42-story building that faces 2 streets that are 20 feet wide and just outrageously challenging to make that happen. And it's basically done at this point.
Fun fact that I found out today is the first historical district in New York City was in Brooklyn.
There you go.
Tells
There
it to
you
you
go.
right there, before Manhattan. And I my guess would have been like South Street Seaport.
Right.
But yet it was Brooklyn Heights.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
Annie Holford Smith told me that fun fact when she was on the show, and so here you are. You're on Willoughby Street. You're next to a church, right?
Exactly.
And now,
next to a 300-year-old church,
right.
and we have to join to the church and access into their sanctuary.
Yep.
So and there's a lot of glass in the church. It's all antique, very, very fragile. And I mean, that's what makes working in an urban area challenging and makes the business very interesting, because we had to figure out, how do you puncture that wall?
right? It's not just drawing this beautiful facade and trying to put it on the sales rental sheet.
Right.
It's about all these other pieces, and I'm always amazed how they get the materials through from where they're coming
That's
and how
what
they
I'm saying.
get them there. It's just
It's unbelievable.
unfathomable.
And it's like a 4-story subcellar. So there's almost 50 feet or more below grade. And it took a year and a half to get to the street because it's so complex, and it's right near the subway, and there's a tremendous number of overlapping problems there, which when
did
it's
it.
done next month, you won't even know.
We're at the finish line, right?
Yeah.
And no one would ever know.
No one would
But
ever know.
you would know.
No one would
And
know.
I always say, if they always did documentaries of watching it from the first day that a developer had an idea,
Right.
to all the way, what an incredible path that would be to see it the whole way when they're digging it, when they when they call the expediter and say, look, the person next door won't let us in. We got to get on their roof to protect it, right? And you think
Exactly.
of a million different things that happen over the course of a project. But when they're done, it's incredibly satisfying.
Right, and to build large scale stuff is gratifying in its own sense, because like you say, it's so complex, and it's a 3-year process of just of the minimum for the project, and there's so many moving parts, and so people have to be so competent to make this happen.
And
It's
and
impressive,
when you deal
actually.
with savvy developers that have really, really smart people on their team, and they surround themselves with smart people.
Right.
And collectively as a team, in New York City, if you don't have a really good team, it's very hard to navigate here.
Right.
I mean, you know it. You've done stuff all over the world. You
Yeah.
know? So you go to the UK or you go to Paris, it's challenging there too. I'm not going to
Yes.
say that it's not, but New York City, the sheer volume that you're building, and there's somebody else building next door to you, maybe at the same time, building another 40-story building. It's just, it's crazy how they can intertwine, but they do.
Yeah, and I would say that the thing about New York is that ambition, that willingness, that need to dream big. It's still here because people come from my office. Everybody's from everywhere else but New York.
Yeah.
And they come to New York, and the people who come to New York have this ambition, have this quality that they believe in themselves, and that's what it takes to get through a
because when
project.
they get, they believe in themselves, but they also feel the confidence and the vibe from being here.
Exactly.
You know, and you know, we get a lot of really interesting calls. You know, we did the TSX Hotel with Platt, right?
Okay.
And we took a landmark theater. We wrote every reconsideration to the building department to lift the landmark theater from the first floor and move it to the second floor. I mean, just think of that.
That's easy.
Yeah, no problem. We just
no
get
problem.
a couple of things. And, you know, the questions that were asked of us, how do you support it? What do you do with this? What are you doing with the standpipe? How are you going to do this? And literally took it from the first floor. And I said to myself, why? But there was a reason.
Right.
The retail was worth more than the theater.
Exactly.
But the theater had relevance. It was landmarked. It had history. It belonged in the fabric of New York City, and they made sure it stayed. And to me, that is incredible.
I agree with
It's
you.
incredible. And I love the landmark part of our city because I think that the more I learn about it, the more I understand that a lot of the people that are there are not paid employees. They do it on their own.
On their own.
To be commissioners, to be on the teams, to dedicate and give their time. It's fascinating to me that people still have this love for our city, you know?
Yeah.
And for us, we're in it every day, but we, as architects, we walk down and a building is not just a building. A window isn't a window to us. Unless we're distracted with other things, we walk around and go, why the hell did they do that? Oh, wow, holy moly, that's great,
It's
right?
a violation.
It's a violation, right. So, David, as part of the show, Andrew Peters, a good friend of mine from Curry and Brown, he's an estimator, and we always have a segment of the show where I always ask the guest that he always says the rearview mirror is small, the windshield is big. We need to look forward, not backwards. And I love the line because I love a subject matter expert like yourself, who's in the New York City market, to tell us a little bit about where you think architecture is going in New York City, because it's changed. We got a lot of different kind of buildings that 20 years ago we didn't think would ever be in the 50s looking out over Central Park. You know, so tell us a little about what you think the forecast is, or what you think the prediction of what designs are going to look like in New York City, based on, you know, current zoning and everything being bigger.
I think that, well, just recently the City of Yes zoning has been released, and
Correct.
we're all building buildings that are bigger now, designing buildings that are bigger. And what's so fascinating about that is the day it was released, that was the day that all the clients said, okay, go revise that design. It wasn't like, oh, we'll get to it tomorrow. It was the day it was released, it was implemented.
Right.
But I think that buildings are going to get bigger and bigger, because there's a demand for
because there's a bigger
more
bang for the
housing.
buck. So if they
I also think that within each building, they're going to be more self-contained. Buildings are going to have many more amenities.
Without a doubt.
It's not just a swimming pool and a gym. It's a meeting room. It's a cafeteria.
Workspace.
It's just everything. That the buildings will be their own communities. I think also that the resiliency, sustainability issue is going to get more and more serious as the planet warms, the water level increases. The first couple floors are going to be more flow through. I think we're going to see a big change in buildings that are built on the edge of the water. I think that's just inevitable.
Yeah.
I think that high-tech materials more and more. I mean, people might have an opinion about future and past, but technology is relentless, and there's more technology than ever.
David, every show that I have, we can't get through it without talking about technology.
Exactly.
It's part of our life now, in architecture, in the way we live.
My guys go to the site, they have a handheld device, they write on it. A lot of them press a button, it turns it into text. They have their meeting notes before they even leave the site,
Right.
and everything is the communication is easier, and the communication is digital, and it's much easier to work outside of an office. I mean, the
without
whole
doubt.
revolution with COVID and work from home, that's here to stay.
Without doubt.
And I just think buildings are going to get bigger and bigger, and that's the main
Yeah, and
thing.
I think technology plays a big part.
Big
When we
part
do
in
the
it.
surveys now, they use drones. They put sensors on the buildings.
Yeah.
They do this. I mean, they have a way to get
Stuff
data.
that was stuff that was fantasy just 10 years ago.
And also it's there's not a project architect hanging from a scaffold looking at brick.
I
Now
did
they
that.
fly a drone and
I
they can
did
get
that,
within
yeah.
2 inches of
Exactly.
it, snap a picture of it, and say, yeah, brick number 38 from the top at 4 foot 2 inches
Exactly.
is cracked. And we're not putting lives at stake. So definitely technology in architecture has changed. I mean, the style of the pencil buildings is here to stay.
It's here to stay.
It's just because the land value is so expensive, and now the city is allowing them to build these big. Because if you really think about it, prior to zoning, it's been made part of the argument about the city of Yes is that most of the buildings around Central Park, with the current zoning, you couldn't build them. They're all overbuilt because there was no zoning when they
Exactly.
right. So
exactly.
so they actually scaled back a little bit, and now we're scaling back up. So
What also is so fascinating is the city is physically expanding as the floodwaters rise, and you would think that the city would be contracting physically. It's going the other way. They're building more highways on the water, and more buildings into the rivers, and I think that's going to continue. Every inch of Manhattan is going to be used more and more, and obviously the same thing in Brooklyn and everywhere.
even the Bronx. The Bronx has
Of course
had
the
a
Bronx.
huge revitalization in the South Bronx along the water, right by the train. You go there, it's a little mini city that you would have never believed 30 years ago. When you were going up to the country.
Last year
leaving
we
Queens.
built 3 buildings that the property line, obviously right to the property line, and the property line to the elevated train was 15 feet. So if you're in one of those apartment buildings and the train's coming around the corner, it's literally right in front of your face.
And
it's fine. It's safe.
and people have no problem with it.
Right.
People have no problem. It's part of the fabric of living in New York City.
They just have to get better drapes.
You sound insulated once. Well, David.
A little more, not so transparent.
Yeah. Well, it was great to have you, David. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're very busy, but I appreciate you coming in, telling us your story. I love the architectural record story. I think that that's a big part of that propelled you to be who you are.
No question.
And that is just I love the story part. So thank you very much for coming
Thank you.
in, and I appreciate it.
All right.